Hello everyone. Today I'm going to show you how I printed the large tags that were in the album. I printed them onto 6x6 decorative paper and I used Microsoft Word 2010 and the table feature within Word. So let's get started. The first thing we need to do is get a new document. So I'm going to File, New, and get a blank document. I'm going to make this a little bit bigger so it's easier to see. So I said that they were based on using 6x6 paper, so I want to have a 6x6 area to place my paper in and get it aligned properly. So I'm going to do that using a table. So I come up to Insert, Table, and then I'm going to use the rows and columns to help me space and get the text for this tag exactly in the center of the piece of paper. In order to do that, I want to allow a row at the top and the bottom and a column on the left and right, and I'll put the text right in the center. So to do that, I need a 3x3 table. So I've just moving my cursor down till it says 3x3 table and clicking. So I want this table to be 6 inches wide because that is the base of my size of my paper. So I'm going to click on Layout and go to the properties for this table and say in the Table tab here, tell it that the preferred width is 6 inches. Now, we could have used that same pop-up box to do the rest of the formatting, but I want to show you how some of these tools work in this top area. And if you do not see the table tools on your menu, it's because the table isn't highlighted. If I click outside of the table, you'll see that they went away. To get them back, see this little plus sign right here at the top of the table? Just click on that and the table tools come back. So here under Layout, there's two tabs, Design and Layout, that go with the table. There's a section called Cell Size, and we're going to use that to get this formatted the way we want it. I'm going to have, for this particular example, a 4" by 4" text box in the middle of the table. So that means I want to have a 1" border all the way around in order to have it be centered in the entire table. So let's get this sized properly. I'm starting in the top left cell, and I'm going to make the width of that cell 1 inch just by clicking in there, typing a 1 and hitting enter. I want the next row, this is where the text box is going to go in, to be 4 inches wide. Again, coming up here, typing in 4 and hitting enter. And now I'm going to come to the last column and make that 1 inch wide the same way. Now let's go up and down vertically. We're going to look at the height. And if I click in here and come up to this top one, you'll see it's the table row height. Again, at the top, we want this to be 1 inch. And then 4 inches for the next row. Scrolling down to the bottom, we'll make this one 1 inch. I'll make this whole thing a little smaller so you can see it on the screen. So now we have a 6x6 page with a breakdown of where we want the text to go here in the center and have it nicely spaced in the middle of the sheet of paper. So we need two things in order to do this. We need a template to actually place our paper on to print it, and then we need a layout that gets the text in the right location. So let's make the template first based on this, and what we need to have the template is just an outline of where to place the 6x6 paper on the page. So in order to do that, we're going to use the Design tab. We first want to make sure the entire table is selected by clicking in the little table selector up here at the top. Then going to the Design tab, And then over here under borders, we only want to have the outside border. You don't want to have any of those other lines printed when we go to print this. And I should say, if we come down here to borders and shading, the reason it was not quite working, it's best to come into the borders and shading at the bottom, click box, make sure it is saying automatic and it's applying to the table, and click OK. And now you can see we just have the outline on. That would give us our placement for the 6x6 paper. So let's save that file, and I'm just going to save mine on my desktop for right now and call this 6x6 template. And my caps were on, so I get that. So now we've created our template. So now let's create the verbiage to go inside of our tag. And the first thing we want to do is get rid of this border. We can use the grid lines. You can see them lightly on here. Those don't print. We can use them to help us with locating the cell, but we don't want to print on our good paper any of these lines at all. So let's go again, click the table selector, go to borders, down to borders and shading. We're going to say none here, and make sure it's applying to the whole table, and click OK. So now you should just see the light outline. Those are the grid lines. They don't print. We want to put our text here in the center, and let's go get some text to do that with. I'm going to make this a little bit bigger just so that we can more easily see what's going on. I have another document that's got a little dictionary definition here that I want to put on this tag. I'm just copying that to my clipboard and then pasting it here into the center section. Now, obviously the font size, etc., isn't exactly what we'd like, so let's do a little bit of editing for that. Go to the Home tab, and I say one of the fonts I really like a lot for a dictionary definition is just Times New Roman. So I'm going to use that to get started and put that on everything in here. Just scrolling down till I find Times New Roman. And I think it's going to need to be about, I'm guessing, font 26. So let's start with that. Now I want to make this first word stand out a little bit more, so I'm going to bring that size up a little and just try 48. And this is fine. This is all just kind of making it look a little more interesting. So I'm going to change the font of some of the other words just to kind of play around with it a little bit. I think true is an important word, so I'm going to, another font that I like a lot is Castellar, if I'm saying that correctly. So I have that, and maybe just a little bit bigger, and then, oh, I don't know, conviction seems like an important word. Let's try that in Courier, and maybe ability. I think that would be nice in a strong font. And elephant is a very strong font. Let's pick that one. Now, I have a little, you can see that I was going to use this 4x4 square, and there's a little bit of room in here. So maybe a little spacing or size, you know, differences increasing. You could take the whole thing possibly up a notch. That's pretty big. I'm thinking not, but maybe add an extra line break in here. So there we have something that fits just about into that 4x4 center square. So let's save that with a different name. And I'm going to keep the 6x6 in front so that I know, and then just put believe next to it so that I know what it is. So I will show you in a live video how I actually attach the paper to the decorative paper to a carrier sheet in order to print this, and then it's just a simple matter of printing it on the printer as usual. Now my printer, one warning is, my printer I know can handle a taped piece of paper on top of another paper. If you're not sure about that, then I would caution you, you definitely don't want to ruin your printer. So I'm just careful, and I make sure my tape is stuck down very well, and I have not run into any kinds of an issue. So that's the end of the computer portion of this video, and now we'll switch over to seeing it in action. Hello everyone. Now I will show you how I use the template that we created, and I actually print on 6x6 paper. So in front of me I have the template. It has, you can see, the 6x6 block that was printed out using the table. I have some tape, and I have my piece of decorative paper. And so what I do is you want the tape to go at the top, because that's the edge that gets fed into the printer, and I use one continual length of tape. I rest my arm on the piece of paper as I'm taping so that it doesn't shift off the line, and you can see that it is perfectly on here because we don't see any of the black lines showing through. So now I would take this to my printer and feed it in, knowing that this is the side that will get printed on. In the inkjet printer that I have, and I should say I'm using an inkjet printer, I know it works on my printer. Be careful, you know, that this is a technique that will work on your printer without the tape coming off. In my printer, and to print on this side, I have to feed the paper in with that underneath. So I print it, and then when it comes out, here's an example of one that was printed that I've since trimmed, and it printed this create definition on it, and then I just carefully pull the tape back up. I've been able to get a couple uses out of the tape, but again, you'd want to be very careful. You don't want tape coming off inside of the printer, or you risk damaging the printer. So I carefully remove the tape, and then in this case I decided I wanted to cut it down a little bit, so I just cut on these places, and that was the final tag. So I hope this has been helpful to you to understand how I made this tag. I use Word 2010 to make a lot of different things, customize them and print them and control the size, the font, the color. I find it very useful, and it's not, the techniques that I use are not all that complex. So I hope you'll give it a try.